Last winter, I opened my jewelry box and realized my wedding ring was gone. The same ring my husband placed on my finger 42 years ago. At first, I thought I had misplaced it. But then my grandson quietly whispered something that changed everything. Dad sold it last week. I felt my entire body go cold. My own son had secretly sold the last thing my husband ever gave me to pay for his wife's luxury vacation. And what I did next destroyed the future they thought was guaranteed. The last thing my husband ever gave me was a small gold wedding ring, simple, plain, worn smooth after 42 years of marriage, and one cold Tuesday morning I opened my jewelry box and realized it was gone. At first I thought maybe I had forgotten where I placed it. Old people forget things sometimes. At least that's what my daughter-in-law always liked to imply. So I checked the bathroom drawer, my nightstand, even the kitchen sink, nothing. Then my grandson quietly walked into my room holding his tablet. "Grandma," he whispered nervously, "Dad took your ring last week." I froze completely. "What do you mean he took it?" My grandson looked scared instantly. "He told Mom not to tell you." Room suddenly felt ice cold. My son Daniel had secretly taken the one thing my late husband left behind, and deep down I already knew exactly why. 3 years earlier, Daniel and his wife Rachel moved into my house after temporary financial problems. Somehow became permanent. At first I didn't mind helping. I paid the utilities, bought groceries, cooked dinners, watched their son after school. But over time, helping slowly turned into being used. Rachel loved expensive things, luxury handbags, spa weekends, designer shoes she pretended they could afford. Meanwhile, Daniel kept drowning deeper in debt trying to keep her happy. And somehow, they still acted like I was the burden. That afternoon, I calmly drove downtown to the local pawn shops. The third store had it. The moment I saw my wedding ring sitting under bright glass lights, my chest tightened painfully. The owner recognized me immediately. "Your son sold it a few days ago," he explained awkwardly. "Said the family needed emergency cash." Cash, apparently Rachel's luxury resort vacation, counted as an emergency now. I stared at the ring silently for several seconds. And I bought it back myself, using my own money. Again, on the drive home, something changed inside me. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just became calm, dangerously calm. Because after years of disrespect, I finally understood something important. The problem wasn't that they needed help. The problem was that they felt entitled to my sacrifice. That night at dinner, Rachel complained loudly about airline prices while Daniel avoided looking at me completely. Neither one knew I had already found the ring. I quietly buttered my bread and listened. Then Rachel laughed and said, "Honestly, retirement must be nice. No real responsibilities anymore." I almost smiled, because at that exact moment I had already decided they were about to experience real responsibility for the first time in their lives. The next morning I called my lawyer. By Friday my will looked very different. Daniel's inheritance gone. Instead, everything would eventually go into a trust for my grandson's education. Not Rachel. Not Daniel, just the one innocent person left in that house. But I wasn't finished yet. I also cancelled every automatic payment connected to my account, utilities, internet, their car insurance. Gone. The chaos started almost immediately. Rachel stormed into the kitchen holding her phone. "The internet stopped working again," she snapped. I calmly sipped my tea. "You'll have to pay the bill yourselves now." Her face twisted instantly. "Retired," I replied softly. "Apparently I don't have real responsibilities anymore." Looked up sharply from the table. He knew something had changed. That evening he knocked quietly on my bedroom door. "Are you upset about something?" he asked carefully. I stared at him for a long moment, then I opened my jewelry box and placed the wedding ring onto the table between us. The color drained from his face immediately. I held up my hand. No lies filled the room. Finally he sat down heavily in the chair across from me. Rachel had wanted money for a luxury ski trip with friends. Credit cards were maxed out. They panicked, and he convinced himself he'd replace the ring later. Replace it as if memories could be repurchased. I looked at my son quietly, then I asked the question that destroyed him. "When exactly did stealing from your mother start feeling acceptable?" He broke down crying instantly, but strangely, I felt nothing anymore, not anger. Not sadness, just exhaustion. Years of sacrifice had finally emptied me. The following week reality crashed into their lives hard. Without my money covering everything, they started falling apart financially. The luxury gym membership disappeared first, then Rachel's shopping packages stopped arriving, then came the screaming arguments late at night. Walls become very thin when money disappears. One evening Rachel exploded in the kitchen. "You're ruining our lives over one stupid ring," she yelled. I slowly stood up from my chair. "Stupid ring," I repeated softly. "That ring mattered more to me than anything you own in this house." She rolled her eyes dramatically. And that's when I finally understood something terrifying. Rachel genuinely believed I existed to financially support her lifestyle, nothing more. 2 months later, Daniel sat across from me at the dining room table looking completely broken, bills piled around him. "We might lose the car," he admitted quietly. I nodded silently. For the first time in years, he looked like an adult finally meeting consequences. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. "Can you help us one more time?" I looked directly at him, and calmly said no, not cruelly, not angrily, just firmly, because rescuing them again would only teach them that betrayal had no cost. A week later, Rachel moved out temporarily to stay with her sister after another huge argument, and honestly, the house became peaceful again. Daniel started cooking his own meals, managing bills, taking responsibility. For the first time since moving in, he actually started acting like a grown man. Then one evening he quietly handed me a small velvet box. Inside was my wedding ring, professionally cleaned and restored. "I know I can't fix what I did," he said softly. "I needed to try." I looked at him silently for several seconds, then I carefully placed the ring back onto my finger, not because everything was forgiven, but because some lessons finally have to hurt before people change. 6 months later, Daniel moved into a modest apartment he could actually afford. Rachel never came back. And every morning now I sit peacefully near my kitchen window drinking tea while sunlight fills the room my husband once loved. The silence no longer feels lonely, it feels earned. Because sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stop protecting people from the consequences of their own choices.